Welcome to today's Paint and Draw Together video. In this video, I would like to talk about 10 essential not painting tips every beginner watercolor artist should know. Let's dive into it. Tip number 1. Invest in quality materials. Purchase good quality watercolor paper, paints, brushes, and other supporting art supplies. Quality materials can significantly impact the outcome of your paintings and make the learning process so much more enjoyable. I usually say, buy the best value you can afford, which sometimes isn't the most expensive art supply out there on the market. Let's talk about brushes. To start, you would need a few round brushes, one small, one medium, and one large. And then you will need one large flat brush for big washes and one smaller flat with a little bit firmer bristles to remove paint from the surface whenever you like. The next is watercolor palette. You can use plastic one, but it is going to stain heavily. That's why it's much better to use simple porcelain plate as a starting point, which you can get in any kitchen supply store. Or if you prefer, you can really buy porcelain palette. It would not stain, it will easily clean back to white, and it will match the color of watercolor paper so that it's very easy to distinguish the color by looking at it. It is highly advised to buy the best value you can afford, and usually that is 100% cotton artist quality watercolor paper. This paper is sized inside and at the surface. It's buffed inside with calcium carbonate so that acidity from the air does not impact the paper's integrity and the paper doesn't yellow over the time. And it's made to last a few hundreds of years at least if properly taken care of. So that's the paper where you want to have your final painting on. It will allow you to employ all kinds of watercolor techniques. If you want 20 washes, you can apply 20 washes on it. If you at the end want, to scrape out half of the paint and apply another heavy wash to unify everything, you would be able to do it. However, cellulose-based student quality paper will not allow you to do that. At some point, it will give up, will start to disintegrate, and the color will look blotchy and unsightful. So if you spend, let's say, a month working on a painting, and then at the end you need to do just one more thing to make glorious masterpiece, and the paper gives up, you will be very upset with yourself. For practicing, however, you certainly can buy a one pad of student quality cellulose-based paper just to draw squares, practice brush strokes, and some other not really final painting related exercises. The next is paint, of course. Paint is again divided in artist quality and student quality. This set here is, for example, Schminke Horadam, which is artist quality paint, which I use in my YouTube videos because it has nice shape. But that doesn't need to be the only brand on earth. There are many others. My favorite, Embark or Da Vinci or Mayberry Blue, Holland, many brands. Or you can opt to make your own watercolor paint. And that is our high-end artist quality paint. The second category is student grade paint like this. This is Winston & Newton cotton. Winston & Newton has artist quality as well. And that is also an option for somebody who is starting and would like to experiment. Even though at some point during the painting, you will realize that you cannot anymore push that color further. You cannot build intensity and vibrancy any further from some medium point because it is not highly pigmented paint. That's why it would simply run out of that color intensity to reach the deepest and darkest depth which usually artist quality pigments are capable of, and paint as well, because they have higher percentage of pigment in the paint compared to student grade watercolor paint. Now, as you progress with painting, you might also opt to make your own watercolor paint, as I do, and then have your own customized palette with the highest possible concentration of pigment. Tip number 2 is to use limited palette, which means start with a limited color palette. Focus on a few colors, which will help you understand color mixing and avoid overwhelming complexity in your early works. Usually, the beginner sets start with 12 colors. Some of them are a better choice than the others, and then the next has 24 and the next one has 48 colors. Well, all that is great and very convenient. If somebody is just starting, having 48 colors to choose from can be completely overwhelming and would not help in any way. Because when somebody is starting to paint, color mixing is one of the biggest challenges. And if you have 48 colors to choose from, that becomes mind-boggling. And there is no way anybody can find a logic among looking at 48 colors and trying to mix and match if the artist has never painted before. It's just too much to absorb all at once at the beginning. Instead, I would recommend to start with a limited palette. 10-12 colors is more than enough. This set, which is Schminke Horadam, actually comes with a very convenient collection of colors. Lemon yellow, which is cadmium yellow, then mid yellow, mid-range, mid-red, and then magenta, ultramarine, phthalo blue, phthalo green. This is convenient mixture of light green, which is yellow and phthalo green, and then earth pigments, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, sepia, and black. I added here at the end convenient sap green mixture so that I don't have to always mix phthalo green, burnt sienna, and yellow, because I can make this yellow quite dirty very quickly. So adding convenient sap green mixture allows me not to make this lemon yellow dirty when I paint. So that is tip number 2. Use limited palette. Do not go crazy with the set of 48 colors, because it might not really be beneficial at the end of the day. Now, tip number 3. Learn the properties of different pigments. Familiarize yourself with the properties of various pigments. Some colors are more granulating, while others are more transparent or staining. Knowing these characteristics will help you make informed decisions while painting. And that is very important. For example, here I have cobalt violet, cobalt pink light, which is actually cobalt violet in the light shade. And I talked about this pigment in one of my previous videos. You can look. I will put link about that pigment, which is very special, extremely light fast. However, its tinting strength is really, really low. And when you make your own palette out of pure pigments, as I do here, you really get intimate knowledge of every specific pigment. Is it transparent? Is it staining? Is it granulating? Does it need to be grinded for a long time or short time? How it behaves? And that certainly helps while you're using that pigment in painting, because you would get to know every single pigment, what kind of hue it has, what kind of mixing properties it has, and which of those pigments go very well together and which ones would just not go together and will either lift each other or create mud. And knowing all that is extremely important. Tip number 4, understand water control. Learn how to control the amount of water on your brush and paper. Water control is crucial in watercolor painting and affects the intensity and flow on the pigment and overall joy in the watercolor painting. For example, let's look how to properly pick paint from your palette. Watercolor paint comes in tube and pen or half pen form, and more or less either way eventually it becomes dry like here. So in order to properly pick this paint, you will need wet brush. So you will wet brush, remove some amount of moisture, and then go straight into the paint. Sometimes, if you are not too concerned how intense that color is, you can go and paint with it right away. However, what I often have tendency to do is I pick the color and then I dilute it here and disperse it fully and completely. And I also see what kind of color it is. Is it exactly the hue I want? Or maybe I need to mix it with another one. But instead of going right into another color, I usually wash the brush, and then if I want another color, for example this yellow, then I will add it and create the color I'm after. If I went directly from green to yellow, this yellow will become contaminated and it would be extremely hard to get that pure clean yellow afterwards. Now, knowing what color it is, I can go and paint, and in this case I have wet brush and my paper is dry. That way I can control every edge which I need with exact position of the brush where I need it to go. However, for various watercolor painting techniques, sometimes we choose to have wet paper and then we pick the color, we drop the color, and the color disperses in this wet paint underneath. If we need to control how much water we have on the brush, we can use napkin like this and then take extra and then pick only little if that's the intention and create very controlled fine details or flow of the paint. So all this is separate topic and probably topic for another video, but it is very important to play and exercise and learn more about it. Without having full control of how to properly pick, mix the paint, and how to place it on the paper so that you're in control where that paint goes and how far it goes and what kind of edges it creates, it will be, of course, very difficult to paint anything. Tip number 5, learn to stretch watercolor paper. Stretching watercolor paper prevents it from warping when it gets wet, and this technique is especially useful when working with wet washes or large areas of colors. There are many different ways to stretch watercolor paper, and depending on your preference, you might choose one or the other method, or not stretch your paper at all if the amount of water and paint you're using is not significant. For example, for botanical illustrations where the entire background stays white, there is no need to really stretch that paper because the application of the color is more or less wet on dry and in very small amounts, and the paper would not really buckle. However, as a general rule, for all around watercolor painting, I always stretch my watercolor paper for all larger pieces. And for that, I use, for example, a board. In this case, this is just small masonite board covered with shellac, but I have much bigger boards. And for example, this one here is 1/2 inch light board, and I have quarter sheet of artist watercolor paper, which has been stretched, secured with a tape, and then secured with artist tape all the way around. So those two are usually the tapes I use. This one is gum tape, which here has a layer of glue, which is called gum. And then when that is wet, it becomes very sticky and it grabs wet watercolor paper and attaches it to the board. So the process will be, at least the one I'm using, to wet watercolor paper, place it on the board, make sure it's not too wet, and then cut piece of tape, wet it, and place it over all around all 4 edges, and then wait until all that dries. Once it's dried, then I go with this pH neutral artist tape around 1 millimeter inside from gum tape, and place it all around so that subsequent washes do not reach gum tape and detach the paper. That way it becomes firm and secure, like here. And in that case, I have first gum tape, and then I have artist tape, which is pH neutral. It's not masking tape used for household items, and this tape would not leave any yellow residue once it's removed at the end of the painting. Now, there is probably widely spread opinion that good artist quality papers do not become warped under a large quantity of water, which is incorrect. Every single cotton paper will expand under substantial amount of water and then contract back to its original shape. So if your painting style is the one which requires a lot of water and has a lot of wet in wet applications or multi-layering painting technique, then you do need to stretch the paper. Otherwise, it will be very hard to achieve smooth transitions of colors and have enjoyable painting overall. Tip number 6, experiment with color layering. This is very, very important in watercolor painting. The paint is transparent, and rarely even opaque colors are truly, fully, completely opaque. They are not. When the water is added, they are still transparent and they do not get to the fullest, darkest, opaque version of themselves, because it is watercolor. It's not gouache, it's not acrylic, it's not oil, it's watercolor. So it's supposed to always allow certain amount of light to penetrate through every layer of watercolor. Now, when one layer of watercolor is placed under and allowed to dry, and the next layer placed above it, then those 2 layers optically blend, and the layer under will still shine through the layer above and provide very interesting and very enticing visual effect of blended colors, but not mechanically blended, rather optically blended. And when you play with this and when you embrace this technique, you can obtain very, very luminous watercolor painting which glow with light, because The layer under, for example here, yellow, will glow through the pink layer above it, and that way you obtain very interesting and of course much better painting at the end. For example here, there was no way I can, in this painting, paint all this in one layer, because doesn't matter how much I try to match the exact color hue, the exact value, the exact edges which I would like to accomplish. Watercolor painting is always a process. It's never execution of preset steps, because you would paint one layer, you will step back, look at it, and then figure out what is the next step which should be done. And it's always correction of something which has been done prior to it and build up at the top of the work which you already invested up to that very moment. As the painting progresses, the amount of paint and the percentage of the painting you will be touching with the next layer will be smaller and smaller, but nevertheless, it's still going to be one after another layer until you accomplish desired color hue, color value, and also the edges and overall harmony in the painting. For example, here I have this portrait which I made as a demonstration how to paint hair, which probably will be one of upcoming videos, which is not possible to paint in one layer. It is certainly something which has to be done in multiple layers. The background as well has to be done in multiple layers, otherwise there will be no smooth transition and exact darkness or lightness which is desired in every good watercolor painting. Tip number 7. Learn how to protect white and experiment with color lifting. In watercolor painting, white is white of the paper, and that's going to be the brightest and the most pleasing white which could be present in watercolor painting. In some very small sections at the end of the painting, you might be able to add dot or two of white if you lose it. However, every effort should be made to preserve white of the paper as white in the watercolor painting. Now, manufacturers, of course, came up with a lot of creative ideas, one being to use masking fluid, which is liquid rubber, and that fluid could be applied with silicone applicator, and then white of the paper can be preserved by that. Of course, this needs to be applied on completely dry paper with a silicone applicator, not with a brush, because it's going to ruin the brush. And then you will need to wait until that's completely dry, and only then start painting. And that gum will actually protect the paper. After all that is done and the paper is again completely bone dry, that could be removed with a finger or with a rubber cement pickup, which of course picks all this, and then the white is relieved. However, in that case, we get quite hard edges, and my preference is to actually paint around white areas. Unless I have something like this, which is this interesting shirt which has a lot of little white dots, and it would take quite some time to paint around all those. So in these rare instances when I have quite intricate details, then I do use liquid gum and protect white, and then after that refine it. Now, there are other ways. There are even masking tapes or even masking film for bigger areas, which could be used to protect white, and some other effects as well. However, it's all personal preference. What I find, the more I paint, the less of any of this I need to use. Again, unless I have some very intricate details I need to worry about. But in the face, in the hair, I didn't need to do that. It was only for those white dots where it just simply made sense to do so. Now, the next part of this tip is color lifting, which is extremely important. For that, I usually use brush like this. So I will wet it, and then if I need to, let's say, remove some area here, I can go and wet that area and tease it with a brush, and then take tissue and dab it, and then I have not completely white, but certainly lighter area. Where I use this more often than not is when I have hard edge, like here, which I would like to soften. And I want to lift some of that paint, but not really too much of it. I just want to soften that edge and make it more pleasant and more natural. In that case, I would use exactly same technique to accomplish desired visual effect. So those two are very important. Preserve your white. Do not count on being able to remove the paint later, because that would not be possible. It would never ever be again white if any paint comes on it. Even the lightest yellow, it would never be again white. So for the most crisp and pleasing painting, always preserve white. Even more than you need, because, as I often say, it is always possible to make your watercolor painting darker and duller, but not vice versa. If you make it too dark in the sense of losing white, it's not possible to return that white back in the same pristine form. Also, if you made it too muddy and dull, it's not possible to revert that back and make it to shine and look all fresh with a glowing color. It's just the color which became muddy and was already absorbed in the paper and cannot be reverted back. Tip number 8, practice mindful observation. This is my most favorite tip, and in my view, the most important. Practicing mindful observation by studying the world around is paramount. Pay special attention to the way how light interacts with objects, how the play of shadows and lights and subtle variations in color all together mold the form. This awareness will enhance your observation skills in painting and tremendously help you to create beautiful, realistic, three-dimensional paintings, which your viewer will feel as if it can reach into painting and pick that rose or smell the rose or pick that cup. That is what is necessary in order to be able to achieve such paintings. Without practicing that mindful observation, you cannot know what to do. For example, here I have flowers, and a friend of mine told me when I started to paint that the world will never be the same after I start to paint and start to observe and look at the world around. And I thought, why would that be? I already know how the world looks like. I don't need to look at it differently. However, it did change my look and observation around everything I ever look at. When I look at sky, I look at it completely different. When I look at the shadows and light in the morning, now it is completely different than how it was before I started to paint. I observe, I look, I learn, because the nature is the best teacher. It will tell us what color in the morning is colder, in the evening and sunset is warmer, how the sky looks like. Is it blue? Is it pink? Is it purple? Is it yellow? How the clouds look like? Where is the sun compared to clouds? Where is the light? Where is the shadow? All that it's visible. For example, if I look here and analyze what you see here, I can see that highlight is on this side here, and inside there is not enough light, so it is going to be darker. However, this petal here, actually leaf, is covering the one below, so there will not be enough light in this section. However, the section which is above it is certainly exposed to light, but the tip here is the one which probably goes under 90 degrees to the light source, and it has very shiny edges which eventually become bleached. And then the story goes on. So looking at every single subject you're painting and observing where the light comes from, where the highlight is, when middle tone is, where shadows are, how those interact, how the edges look like, you will have all answers how to paint any specific subject. You will know, is that edge hard or soft, and is it something you need to communicate in a different way. For example, this petal has certain thickness to it, so that is communicated by having this thick highlight, because there is edge which creates a different kind of shadow compared to the rest of the leaf. And all those things, surfaces, is it glossy, is it reflective, is it translucent, is it textured like hair or fur or carpet or a sweater, all that creates very interesting play of lights and shadows on the object, including highlights, reflective lights, cast shadows, core shadows, and so on and so forth. The more you learn about this, the better artist and painter you will become. Tip number 9, protect your artwork. What I mean by this is, do not do something in rush or without thinking what kind of consequence that will have on your painting. For example, when you start painting, you stretch your paper, it is wet, don't touch it, let it dry. Don't mess with it because nothing good will come out of it. So that is important. When you start painting, of course, first you will sketch the outline or the subject you want to paint. Use the pencil which is appropriate for it. Don't go with those very dark 6BHB and whatnot. I usually go with F. That is sufficiently soft, sufficiently hard, and creates the hue which is not that harsh, so that I can easily remove it by using kneaded eraser. Also, when I paint, you probably saw me in other videos, I always use a piece of paper and rest my hand on it, because hand contains oil, and if I do this, then it is going to be oil which gets deposited on the paper, and then it acts like resist, and you cannot paint over it comfortably because you might get blotchy and you might get non-desirable texture in that painting. Also, when the painting is large and you have your palette or you have water over it. Cover all areas which are not the areas which are needed. Put a paper around so that you don't accidentally drop the water or paint or anything else on the section which you don't need to expose for that specific section you're working on. Of course, when you don't paint, then the painting needs to be at a secure place so that it doesn't flip over, it doesn't get in the way and something falls on it, because this is paper, and if anything falls on that paper, it will be permanently ruined. And trust me, I know it. It did happen a few times, and it does happen to everybody a few times before they learn the lesson. So because of that, I did include this as a very, very important tip. And my last tip number 10, is to practice, to paint. How regularly? As much as you can, or as much as you feel comfortable and you enjoy it. There is no rule saying you have to paint every day, every hour, every minute. Such rules are simply counterproductive in my view, because we don't feel every day creative. Sometimes we will explore the subject we want to paint, and that will take the whole day. It doesn't necessarily have to be painting. Even if you just spend time looking at your curtains and observing where are highlights, where are shadows, where is reflected, cast, all kinds of elements of light and shadow areas, even that is extremely, extremely valuable, which falls into that mindful observation. Not necessarily holding the brush and painting every day, but however, in order to become watercolor artist, you certainly need to paint. Consistent practice is key to improvement. So set aside time when you're relaxed, when you enjoy, pick the brush and practice. If nothing else, create squares and explore the pigments, explore how to control the edges, how to layer the color. Not necessarily paint, but at least get yourself into the right mode for the painting. What I have tendency to do is, when I am to work on a larger painting, I take smaller paintings and then work on them for a little while, half an hour, sometimes even half day, just so I get in the right mood and I feel like now I can work on a larger painting without fearing that I'm not exactly at that moment in my mind where I can really attack something which I spend, let's say, whole month working on, and every brush stroke could possibly ruin it. Remember that experimentation and curiosity are key components of artistic growth. As you continue to explore these tips, you will develop a deeper understanding of watercolor techniques and find your unique approach to this beautiful medium. If you have your favorite tip you would like to share, please write it down in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Have a fantastic day and see you in the next video.